Welcome again to the Cuddler Chronicles, pain-free living beyond the body. And there's a lot of areas in life that can be a pain in the... That's why, I don't know if you are like me, but I grew up thinking that owning a home was something that only rich people did. And with that in mind, I have Tiffani Norris, loan officer with Village Bank Mortgage. So thank you for coming on, Tiffani.
Thank you for having me. I very much appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Love having you. I have known Tiffani for about a year now, and one of the things that has really been driven into my thought process when it comes to her and mortgages is that really what you do is kind of redeeming that American dream. Like I was saying as a kid, I thought that there's no way I'm going to be able to get a house, right? And you really redeem that for people. So talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, truthfully, there's the people who think that there's no way that they'll ever be able to afford to buy a house. So something is going to keep them from being able to. So and my honest opinion of that is it just depends on what you want to set as your priority. So purchasing a house is an attainable goal, but depending on where you are with things right now, it's going to determine how far you are from being able to accomplish that goal.
But there's a path.
There is a path. And so, and everybody's path is likely going to look fairly different because of where they're starting from, right? You know, some people may be at a different point on the start line as it would be. So getting to that ultimate goal is going to look a little bit different. But, you know, being able to purchase a home is, I mean, it really is life-changing. And, you know, in the day-to-day, you get very used to, you know, this is just a job, right? You're just helping people buy a house. They're just buying a house. It's just putting a roof over their head. But it's not. It's so much more than that. So, you know, when you purchase a home, that is an asset. It's an asset that you own. And so, yes, you may have to get a mortgage. And so, yes, the bank has some ownership rights in that too. But you own that asset. And that asset is going to continue to grow in value. And all you have to do is make your payment every single month. And essentially, your home continues to appreciate. You build equity. And then one day, you'll be able to tap into that equity. So, and worst case, you can pass that down to your children or anybody else in your family that you want to. So
we were talking about that's how you start to build generational wealth. Is have things that, unlike your car, when you pay it off, yes, you own more of the car, but the car's not as valuable as it was when you started paying. Versus a house, where
exactly right.
you pay it off, you have more, but it's also worth more. So it's kind of growing on both ends. It's growing as you pay down the debt, but it's also growing in value at the same time.
That's exactly right. Yep. And that big, as it expands, that thing that's in the middle, that's your equity. That's what you have something to work with. You know, if you find yourself later down the road in a tight spot, you could use that equity to help you pay bills off. You can tap into that equity to help you buy another property. You know, and that could help you. You know, some people use that as a way to build an investment portfolio, which is just another way to continue to build wealth. But, you know, even speaking for myself, you know, I just own one property, but considering that I've owned my property for 15 years and I have seen my value almost double.
Wow.
That's amazing. What other asset do you have that in 15 years has almost doubled how much it is in value? And all I've had to do every month is make my mortgage payment, right? And the nice thing is once you own your property and you have your loan, most people have a fixed rate mortgage, right? So their payments are going to be the same. So now you're in control of what your housing payment is. You no longer have to worry about your landlord, you know, upping your rent.
Right.
So now I realize that maybe purchasing a home is not for everyone. But if somebody wants to purchase a home, they can. It's just going to be a matter of how much time they're going to need to get from, you know, point A to point B.
Yeah, we were talking about that actually before we started recording, that the question isn't even really, are you ready to buy a home, or, you know, is it the time to buy a home or anything like that. The question is, do you want to buy a home? That's when to come talk to somebody like you, because you can show them the path to it.
Exactly. So I feel it's very important when someone has identified that as a want, right? So to me, that means they put it on their goal board, right? Like that, essentially. Once they've identified that, then we need to be sitting down and having a conversation. So some people believe that the real estate agent is the first person that they need to talk to as soon as they know they want a home. But I tend to believe the opposite, and I think that the mortgage person should be. And it's not just because I'm a mortgage loan officer. But if you go to a licensed mortgage professional, right, you can take some of that education you may have gotten online from looking up different pieces of information and find out how they directly affect you and your ability to be able to qualify. And so if you come to me and I look at your stuff, I'm going to tell you one of two things. Either you're doing great, you are on track, so you just let me know when you feel it is the time for you to move forward purchasing a home. Or I'm going to tell you, you know what? We need to work on these few little things here, and then you'll be in a position in which you will be able to qualify. So,
and you can give them like mile markers on that road and know when.
For the
to
most
be
part,
there.
yes, exactly. So for the most part, we can. I try to take into account what people can do. If I give you a plan, doesn't really mean anything if you can't find a way to attack the plan, right? So, so for me, being able to tell someone you're good, let me hook you up with a real estate agent and they can show you what your options are, and when the right property comes along, you're all good to go. Or if someone's not ready now, maybe we set up like, okay, so let's touch base in 2 months or 6 months or a year down the road, depending on what it looks like their timeline is going to be. And say, then come back to me, let's check in on where you are with things. And then if when they come back, they're at the point where they need to be and they're able to qualify, and what they can qualify for is going to fit what they want, then at that point, then they can go to the real estate agent and start looking. So, I personally know what it's like to have someone trust in me, show me a property, fall in love with the property, and then I found out that I couldn't qualify for the property. It was heartbreaking, very heartbreaking. And I don't want anybody else to go through that. And people don't understand that until they've been through it. But it burned me for several months. So fortunately, a year or so later, I was, in a position to be able to buy. But yeah, it hurt, and I would love to do everything I can to avoid someone else having to go through that same pain.
Right.
Pain
I get
free.
it. Yeah, exactly. It can be a big pain in the butt,
I know.
What you're describing, that's crazy. And I even had an experience kind of on the other end where, everything was done, but once I was approved, that point in between, like being approved, the offer was accepted, all that stuff until closing, my mortgage changed like 40 times. I kept getting all of these updates, and I'm like, I can't even see what the change was. And my mortgage loan officer ghosted me. She did not respond to anything from that process to closing. I didn't hear from her. So that's one of the things where you can get burned on both ends. And that's really why I wanted to bring you on here, because I know that you are willing to help be that person that helps you. Somebody needed to help me make good decisions without me having to be the expert.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
And that's where I feel like your approach, which I don't know how you feel about the way that I say it, but it's almost like, if you make it an acronym, it was the lie. You're talking about the listening to people and what was it? It was you probably remember.
Hold on, I'm trying to remember what it is now. So was listen.
You listen to them, right? So they don't settle for a home or a loan they don't really want.
Identify.
Right?
So we can identify their pain points or where we can make improvement, and then E for educate. So educate them on what their options are going to be based on where they are at that time. So so that's great. I like that you turned that in to a different kind of lie.
Yeah, because there's so many
lie.
people that will lie to you just to get your money.
Yeah.
But the way that you lie is actually trying to be the bridge in between me not knowing anything and me making a good decision. You're the bridge in there. That's your lie.
Yes, exactly.
So how, other than the experience that you just talked about, is there something else that shaped that process, that personal attention that you want to flow into your whole process there?
Most definitely. And a piece of that, and a lot of that is just seeing how people have been treated over the years. It's unfortunate that you have the story that you have with regards to purchasing your home. The more unfortunate part is that you're not alone, and that is a story that a lot of people have to share. I take a different approach with regards to how I'm working with people. I see myself as not just being able to help them with a mortgage loan, but help them with their mortgage experience. And that all ties into their home buying experience as well. And so for me, it's just very important that you are making that client feel heard. That's number one, right? So that's why we listen, is because we want them to feel heard as far as what are their goals, what are their pain points, what are their fears or their concerns about the mortgage or buying a house now, what scares them about the payment, these types of things. If we can talk out what those things are, maybe we can find a solution to that, or just have more conversation about it. So that's number one. And as a part of that, when people understand what they're doing and the thing that they're making the decision on, they feel so much more empowered and more excited when they get to the end. It's not about, to me, the mortgage process is very much enhanced by complete transparency, right? So I want to be an open book about everything that I know. I don't want you to hold it all in your head. It's a lot of information to hold in your head. But if I have the information and I can help explain it to you in a way that you understand it, and then you can come along with me and we can make the decisions together, then don't you feel so much better at the end? You helped make those decisions. So I helped guide you through the process, but you bought that house. You qualified for that mortgage. That exactly. So, and I want people to feel excited on closing day, not fearful on closing day. Exactly.
Not like, did we really do it?
Yeah. And honestly, I'd like to create some, excitement that is going to last you longer, not just excitement for like the day. And then the next morning you wake up in your new house and you're like, oh my gosh, what did I do? So, but yeah, it's great. I actually just had a client who reached out to me, in the last month. It's been a couple of months since they purchased their house, and just reached out just to say thank you for, guiding them through the process and making the decisions that they, helping them make the decisions that they made. So, which is, it's pretty freaking awesome when somebody takes time out of their day just to say that. So,
really
so yeah,
is.
That's why I do what I do.
That's awesome. Well, again, wanting to buy a house and not knowing what to do, like what your next step is, and all of that, it can be a real pain in the butt. I am glad that I know you, because I know if I ever buy a house again, I absolutely am going with Tiffani. Tell people how they can get in touch with you.
Okay, so people can find me online, but most importantly, you can reach me on my cell phone number. You can also email me, so I respond to both. You can text me at my cell phone number as well. We can set up a time to talk. Our initial conversation can be just that. It can be just a conversation. Maybe you just want to ask me a few questions. I'm happy to answer those questions, and I'm not going to make you fill out an application to answer some basic questions.
Okay.
If we want to go more in depth about whether or not you'll be able to qualify, then we're likely going to need to do an application in order to give you more specific information. But I really try for people not to be fearful about taking that step. It's one of those things. I think we grew up around the same time. You know, the more knowledge you have, right? So it's important. It empowers you.
NBC, like the more you know.
Exactly. The more you know. That's exactly right. And so for me, it's just about arming people with information. And so if I know more specifics about you, then I can help to be specific as to the guidance that I'm giving you, right? Because what you read online may apply to someone, but it might not apply to your situation. And I've had those scenarios where people have come to me, they want to do planning, and they're like, so I just took all of this money and paid off all of my debt that I had. I'm like, okay, so now you don't have any money. And then when we go back and look, we may have actually not needed to spend all of that money to get them where they needed to be. So if we can have that conversation ahead of time, then you can be wise about how you're preparing for the home buying journey. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah.
Okay. So, the way I like to close is this little questionnaire that I come up with called the Painkiller Closer. There are a few podcasters that I kind of pulled from, and I don't know if you ever saw the show Inside the Actor Studio.
Yes.
But so he always had like this same little questionnaire at the end. So I have mine, the Painkiller Closer. So we will start first with what is the best piece of advice you were either given or you've heard somebody else give, or best piece of advice in your field?
In my field, I would say probably the best piece of advice is to talk to your mortgage loan officer first. So that should be the first person that you talk to. So unless you don't need a mortgage, and if you have cash to buy a house without needing a mortgage, that's fantastic.
Right. Go straight to the lender.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Go to the bank.
Right.
Yep.
Right. Okay. Opposite side, in your field, what is the worst piece of advice you were either given or you've heard other loan officers give?
Okay, so probably the worst one, and this actually I just heard after sitting down with some clients like in the last 2 weeks. We sat down together. They knew that there were some things that they needed to do. And so they came in, they sat down with me, they completed an application with me so that we could look specifically at what they had to work with. And as I looked through it, I identified a few places where they could make some improvement. And they had already been very open about the fact that they weren't sure if this would take them a year or 2 or 5 years, but this is something they really wanted for their family. And so we looked through all of it. And they informed me that the last loan officer that they had spoken to looked at their stuff and simply said, you know what, you just shouldn't, and pushed it back at them. That's the worst advice I have ever heard. How are you ever going to get where you want to be if no one that knows how to get you there is willing to help? So, and a lot of times people are being turned down, but they don't know why they're being turned down for a mortgage. So I like to be a little bit more explanatory. Like I said, transparent.
It's collaborative.
Yes. I just want them
work
to know.
with somebody to get to yes, even if it's not a yes now.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so weird that they would just be like, no.
Yeah.
Like, is it just like you guys are not worth my time to work with? Is that like that's what it sounds like?
Unfortunately, I think that some people in our industry probably feel that that's that it's all about today and what's going to bring you a deal today. So, but again, that's not my philosophy. So I'm just wired a little differently.
Okay. Oh, all right. So I typically like the next question is typically, what is your purpose in life? But I kind of like, before we go to that one, I would love to hear if you have a story. I'm sorry, I'm springing a new one on you, but I would love to hear like if you have a story of like, do you have a lot of clients that you have met with, and it takes 6 months or a year before you can get them to yes, and you were able to walk through that process with them?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes. I have had a few in my years. Probably the most recent that I had, I helped a client in the past year when he first came to me and made application. He did not have a credit score at all. So the credit, he didn't have enough information.
Okay.
So the good thing was he had no debt. The bad thing was he had no credit scores because the bureaus didn't have any information to score him, right? So we ended up taking a look at ways in which he could accomplish getting some credit. I could see that he had some closed accounts way back in the past, but nothing was recent enough for there to be any score. So gave him some action steps, and he came back to me about 60 days later, and he was able to accomplish getting credit scores. Actually wanted at each bureau, which was fantastic. And so at that point, we knew, okay, this is good. We've at least got you credit scores now. Because he didn't have any debt, but he had really good income, and we were able to start figuring out then what was going to be the next strategy or the next step that he needed to take. And it just so happened that he was looking to purchase the property that he was already living in. He'd been renting this property for several years. The landlord wanted to sell it, and he wanted to buy it. So he had already identified a property, which was good for him because this market, I know, has been really grueling for people. And so because we were working together and we had some flexibility since he was still in his current lease, we were able to go through the process of identifying that he qualified for some first-time home buyer grants. So he was able to use those. We actually got 2 grants for him. He was able to use those grants to help him cover down payment and closing costs. And so we went through the loan process with him, and I would say, all in all, I think the total from the first time he called me to the time he closed was about 7 months, which, I felt like that moved pretty quickly for him because for some it can take a little bit longer.
No credit to buying a house.
That's exactly right. And it was one of those things that he wasn't sure he would ever be able to do again. And he's another one of those that I get pretty regular messages from him to tell me how happy he is to own his property. So, so again, just a really, really good feeling.
Thank you for sharing. I love that story.
Well, thank you for letting me share it. Yeah. I love that story too.
There's so much, like I see it with patients that they come in and they don't even know that it's possible to get to the place where we get them. So it's really cool to hear that you have that same type of experience.
Yes.
Okay, now we're into it.
Okay.
What would you say is the purpose of your life?
To just give back the kindness that I've received in my lifetime. So, and I think, I don't think of myself as being too big. So for me, I just want to, I've received a lot of kindness in the years, not just as an adult, but like my whole life. And so, and I firmly believe that when you do right by others and you're kind to people, that you receive that back. The universe will bring that back to you. And so yeah, that's the mission that I want to live out.
Golden rule.
Yes.
Sounds good.
The golden rule is a good rule to follow.
Yes, it is. Okay, so what is something that others value that you don't?
Okay. So, this one's a tricky one to kind of wrap words around. Efficiency is something that a lot of people value. It's not too high on my priority list. And the reason why is because I feel like most of the time when people are talking about efficiency, they're also removing the customization or the personalization from it. Okay. Right? And to me, when you are providing a service to a person or helping them, each person is unique, and so it should be more customized. So, and I have, as I'm sure several people have, when they worked in like corporate jobs. You know, it's all about the efficiency, so that we can have top dollar earned. And, you know, that's not the reason that I'm in this business. I'm in this business because I want to help people and serve people.
Right.
And so sometimes the best route is not the most efficient route. Makes sense?
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
So for me, that's...
It makes me think there's a saying that, like, if you want to go fast, you go alone. But if you want to go far, you go together.
Yeah,
right?
I like
so
that. That's
what
right.
It sounds like. It's that same type of thought process.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
I mean, and I don't go alone either, right? And in what I do, I have a team of people that are helping me get to where I am. So you're right. You go a lot further when you're not alone.
Awesome.
I like that.
Yeah, it's good. It's a much better way to just to be a human, I think. You know?
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah. Oof. Okay. If there was one law that you could create, everybody had to follow it, what would it be?
Other than the golden rule, which everybody should follow. But I would say if it had to be something of that nature, and I was thinking about it on a level of what I do, right? I would say the one thing I would wish for everyone is that as a part of your primary education, so like before you get out of high school, you should have to take a class where you learn about budgeting, you learn about credit, and you learn the details of credit. Like all of these things I feel like are important. They're just as important as anything else you receive education-wise. But those are the things you're going to use every single day once you are out on your own. And so if we had something that would teach people that, because so many times in my conversations with people, when I'm explaining something to them about maybe credit or budgeting, whatever the case may be as far as getting them qualified, they'll say, oh, I had no idea that that's how it worked, because they didn't learn. And so if you don't learn from a family member, you may never know, you know. And so
and you can learn the wrong stuff too. You
can learn wrong stuff. That's exactly right. So that's an excellent point. And so for me, if you're getting taught that information ahead of time, before you're out in the world on your own, you know, I think it works twofold, right? You share that information with the people who are with you then, right? So that helps. And then you have that education moving forward. So, because like I know, for instance, with my kids, like there are things that I know about credit that I've used to help my children with their credit that I did not know about and was not taught by my mom. Right. So, and again, that's one of those things where you may not necessarily get that education at home. So if you have that as a part of the education, like I just think it's so like just simple things where people can understand how to save, you know, how to build credit, what happens if you know, like what would be the as I get tongue tied, the repercussions of you messing up your credit. Like these are important things that will impact you your whole entire life. And so if you can start out the gate doing those things right with the right education, what a difference it would make for so many people.
Wish I had that 25 years ago.
Yes.
I would have paid probably half the price that I paid for this house if I had known, 20 years ago to get a house.
What you could have done. Yeah.
I have. So I think that's a great one.
Yeah.
Okay. What is a piece of media, so like a book or a movie or a podcast or something like that you're really passionate about, and why?
So for me, the one book that I read that kind of changed my trajectory, as it would be, was a book called The Gift of Imperfection. It's by Brene Brown. She's written a lot of books, of which I have read many of them, and I started with this book. And I read this book at a time when I was kind of going through some rough things and a transition that was occurring, and it just helped me appreciate myself, which kind of changed things. And so then I started reading more Brene Brown books, and actually was in a book club where we at that time were just specifically reading Brene Brown books. So, and so not only did it help me on the individual, but it actually put me in touch with other people, and I'm still a part of that book club. And it's been a fantastic journey to have each other. Like, so we started this book club before COVID happened. And so we went through COVID doing our book club online. And just the support of each other has been fantastic. So personal and business wise, it's been fantastic. So I would
the power of imperfection.
The gift of imperfection.
Oh, the gift of
Yep,
sorry.
looking at
The
it
gift
as
of
the gift of imperfection. Yes, I like to call myself a recovering perfectionist. So so that, and it all started with that book. So so yeah, good read.
That's awesome. Okay. Well, we're almost done.
Okay.
Last question coming up.
Okay.
And it's, when you're done in your career, in this life, how would you like to be remembered? Or what do you hope to have accomplished?
What do I hope to have accomplished? I'd love to give you some big outline of what it was that I would like to accomplish, but I think at the end of the day, I just want I want people to remember me as being kind, and yeah, that's probably the biggest one. For some reason, that just seems to be a theme with me. So, which, you know, I guess there could be worse
right
themes.
From what you said the purpose was, you know, it's like, you know, you hope to have fulfilled your purpose, right? And where you've lived out the golden rule.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's beautiful.
Yeah, kind to my family members, kind to, you know, people that I've been, were acquaintances, as well as people that I know really, really well. So, yeah, I feel like that, of all the things that you could be, kind, it's probably the best.
Right. Not a bad way to be at all.
Yeah, not going to be the most fit. So, you know, don't want to focus on being the prettiest. That's vain. So, you know, those types of things. But I think just overall, in general, just being kind. And to me, that is being open-minded and listening to others and trying to put yourself in other people's shoes, because we all see life through our own lens, and so you just, for a second, you might just want to put down your lens and listen from their side. So so yeah, that's my lot in life. That's all I got.
I think that puts a beautiful bow on this conversation, because a lot of what you do is you take an area of life where people can be downtrodden about their ability to get a house or their financial situation. They may not know where to go, and you are almost like a pair of glasses that shifts their lens and lets them see what's possible. You can get generational wealth. You can get an asset that's going to appreciate. You can change your life. You can change your family's future, and you can give them a clear lens on how to make that happen. So I think that's beautiful. And it sounds like the best way to get in touch with you is for you to put her cell phone in your phone.
Yeah.
So with your permission, I'll actually put that in the description of the video so that people can just, you know, text you right from there.
Yeah, no, that would be wonderful. So yeah,
good.
and there's always happy to answer questions, and I appreciate you having me on so that I could talk to you just a little bit. So always a pleasure.
Yeah.
And yeah, we appreciate all you do to keep us moving forward.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
The Cuddler Chronicles, Pain-Free Living Beyond the Body. Tiffani Norris.
Okay, thank
Thank you.